The final YCS of this terrible format is finally over. You guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more Oz content. Your top 32 out of this YCS. Actually, there were some shocking surprises in this top cut. Like, we had a Yubel FTK deck in the chunk of Yubel decks here. To me, that was one of the craziest things that we had out of this event was, and you know, you see the Nightmare the Archfiend Nightmares at the beginning of this on the thumbnail, which it's so cool. We'll talk about that list here in a little bit. So you did have 8 Yubel decks in representation for your overall top cut, about what I was expecting to be seeing for this, but we also had 18 Snake Eyes. Now, honestly, this representation for Snake Eye to Yubel to like Tenpai is not quite what I was necessarily expecting out here. You know, honestly, the Tenpai number is really small. We only had 2 Tenpai decks in the top cut, which is kind of sad to think about, actually. Now, your Whitewoods Runick deck had 1, and then we had 2 Runick Stun variants in the top cut. So technically 3 Runick decks, but for all intents and purposes, we are going to leave those separate so that you can see a little bit of the differentiation between these, just so you can see. And then we also had Memento taking up a slot in the top cut. That's it. That's your top 32. You're not really, the Fiendsmith was really running this back home, but when you have a format like this, you're really losing a lot of things. And yes, this was like 915 people for this YCS. We got to see that number, and a lot of people were like, oh, you know, like, numbers were down for this event. Yes, it was a California event, but the problem here is it's a North Cal event. You know, people got to remember that this is in Sacramento, which isn't quite as easy as South Cal events, and there's a little bit less of a population there in terms of numbers. But top 16, oh boy, you know, top 16, I think top 16 makes this format look different than it actually is, because, like, okay, you have 9 Snake Eyes decks. Okay, so we have a clear problem present here. But then you have 3 Yubel decks still sitting here at the dinner table, and then you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is interesting. But then your Runick variations, both the Runick Stun deck and the White Forest versions did creep through here. But in the most interesting of times here, you do see 1 Tenpai left in this segment. And then, of course, you know, your Memento player held on here. So, in my personal opinion, your top 16 looks better than your top 32, because a good chunk of those Snake Eyes decks, you shaved off half of those, which, you know what, that's a pretty good conversion rate, in my opinion. But all good things must come to an end, because we must realize what this format truly is. Your top 8, very lopsided here. You had 4 Snake Eyes, so half of your representation is this. Your Yubel FTK is still present here, by the way. The deck has not disappeared. You won't see that happen until top 4. And then you had 1 Tenpai duelist holding on here as well. So that Tenpai player was able to accelerate up through the top cut and actually was doing what their deck needs to do. And alas, you jump into your finals. Oh, look, this is pretty much the same. You had 2 Snake Eyes, a Yubel and a Tenpai doing the thing. And to my knowledge, that Yubel FTK climbed all the way up here into this seed. And that's amazing to see. I believe your finals were, it was Jesse Cotton that ended up winning, but it was against Tenpai. So that last Tenpai player managed to accelerate all the way up and actually sit here at the dinner table for this. That's crazy to think about. Let's pass on over to deck list. So this is, I think, the coolest list that we had the chance to actually see out here. And hi, Transaction Rollback, how are you? So before you're like, how does this work? Well, you see the Archfiend Harris up here? If this is into the graveyard because of a card effect or being destroyed, you can add a card that mentions Archfiend from your deck to your hand. Oh, okay. So we search for this little good card here called the Nightmare Archfiends, which lets you tribute a monster on your field. Special summon 3 Nightmare Archfiend tokens, 2,000 attack, 2,000 defense to your opponent's field in attack position. Each time one of those is destroyed, its controller takes 800 damage. So what ends up happening is you go full Fiendsmith combo into Beatrice here. Beatrice drops down Transaction Rollback for you to copy a trap card, but then you also get to drop this nice little card here called Earthbound Release. When a level 6 or higher monster monsters is normal or special, tribute one level 10 Earthbound monster, destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the combined original attacks of the destroyed monsters. Wait a minute here. You're telling me I just handed my opponent 3 monsters and I can deal 6,000 damage to them, but wait, all 3 of those monsters also get punished through the trap card effect, which now deal my opponent 800 damage. Wait a minute. Is that over 8,000 damage? Yes, it is. Now, could you counter this with Spooky Dogwood? I mean, I got bad news for you here. A lot of these things have 0 attack, 0 defense. There could be something that you could be trying to do with that, but that's what you're doing here. You're also playing, I do say the Mature Chronicle down here. It's actually kind of cool to see that back. You have Wave King Kaiser, of course. You have good old the one of Shifter out here. Actually seeing Shifter as a one of in Yubel with the cross-out Detonators is actually kind of insane. You get a lot of cool dimensions to this deck. It is so much different than what I was initially expecting to see, but you know, as we're kind of heading on into expected ban list this week here, you know, we'll roll it on back. All right, what else we got back here? Oh, we have our White Forest Runick list. And I'd like to give a shout out to a Stellar. Nobody's playing a Stellar right now. It's such a sad day because a Stellar was such a cool card, you know, and everybody was like, yeah, you know, a set is the worthless one. Nah, TCG Perception. You flip that entire conversation piece upside down. You have the exact opposite of what players were kind of expecting to see. Now, in terms of, you know, your modern era runic things out here, you are back on playing the evenly matched right now. You want to be able to have cards to go second. Well, actually, you need to have those cards to clutch onto to be able to balance the game. And that's why you see people back out here focusing on these evenly matched, kind of give you that good chance to do so. I also do see this deck is actually playing Chicken Game. The Chicken Game is still one of the most hilarious cards in modern era Yu-Gi-Oh! But also, you know, being able to just leave this on the field and then have your opponent go, well, I can't really do anything to my opponent because of this. Okay, that's an interesting little piece here. Your ratios with the Aset, the Russia, and the Sylvies, I think all of these are fine. Now, there is one other really cool tech choice down here, and it is the emergency provisions. I love this. I love the fact that this is actually seeing play again. Because remember, you can send all these bad runic cards away to gain 1,000 life points. All right, you know, if you've got dead runic cards set up, okay, well, we can go ahead, send these off, gain 1,000 life points. You know, if you have 4 set cards, provisions during the end phase, suddenly, oh, I've just counterplayed my opponent. You know, this is a really cool tech choice. I did not expect to see anybody out here even wanting to consider playing this, but you know, we've got the spotlight on it. So the time cards are evolving at the end of this format. I think that's hilarious. And our last list here out here, there had to be a Snake Eyes. All right, I'm fine with this, considering the fact that this is the end, the last hurrah for this deck that a lot of people are expecting out here. You're actually very high buy steal numbers. Because Fiendsmith has been such an annoyance for so many people out here. Dru's Worm has been the go-to. So many people have been bringing this card in to kind of counterpick things. I am not surprised to actually see this back in and doing its best. Also, reducing the number of engravers is good, because this does cut back how much money you technically have to spend if you wanted to play the Fiendsmith deck in its, you know, fashion, which is pretty good, actually. The main deck for the rest of this, though, double Ball Drake in combination with this, I think is fine. Down on the side, this is everything that you expect to see in this. You know, you have the full crossouts for any real problematic cards. You have the skill drains as well, and it looks like your extra deck is as designed as you really expected this to be. Outside of that, well, that's your wrap up on the YCS. I gotta tell you, for everything that we saw out of this event, there were some very, very cool things, and I liked that. Having game changer cards actually being relevant in the game, personally, I think is pretty awesome. But to say the least, that's it. So what do you guys think? One last YCS in the books. Can we please change the game already? Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think, and I'll see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.